Welcome to the Read Your Keys podcast. I am your host, Joel Lopez. If you could go on iTunes and please subscribe. If you're enjoying it, please comment. Also on Spotify, please go ahead and follow. Today, my guest is the one and only Ed Latimore. He is a former heavyweight pro boxer, a competitive chess player, full-time author. You can find him on his website at edlatimore.com, and you can also find him on Twitter at edlatimore. Ed, welcome today to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me, man. I'm really happy to be here. No idea what we're going to talk about, but I'm sure it's going to be.
I got something for you
It's going to be very, very fun.
Right off the gate. I saw that you posted a picture with none other than Roy Jones Jr.
Yeah. That's been a good time. I am one of the main sparring partners for his upcoming fight against Mike Tyson. I think that's on the 28th of November.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I've been moving around, helping out, and I'm in there. I'm having a good time, and it's really cool because I think I've done an extraordinary job of keeping myself in shape. I have healthy habits. I don't drink, don't smoke. Still go out, work out almost every day, whether I'm training or not. It's good for you, and I eat well. Most of my food is in fact, not most. All of my food is either home cooked or served at a really nice restaurant. And so I say all that to say I've kept in really good shape. So my coach was like, "Hey, can I'll be working with Roy for this fight because we have the same coach. Do you think you can provide sparring?" That's how that happened. A lot of people go, "How'd that happen?" Did he call you up and no, we just happen to have the same coach, and so that's how that worked.
What's the coach's name?
Tom Yankello.
Did you do some YouTube videos with him?
Yeah, I did some YouTube videos with him. And he's got a whole big channel, big Instagram, big YouTube. He's a really great teacher. I mean, in fact, it's funny you see how teaching is the same across all domains. The fundamentals, the only thing that differs is the specific knowledge that is being taught. And I've learned quite a lot from watching Tom teach. He's very good at it. I mean, he took me and made me a fighter, and I understand how to fight now. And I didn't have that when I was before I got with Tom in my career. So it's good. But he does always say, I can only show you how to paint. I can't make you a painter.
Mm-hmm.
And that always really stuck with me. It's like, okay, I can give you the moves or the brush strokes, but I can't show you exactly what to do when you're in there. And that, but he's done a really good job of that.
Right. It's the technique of it is there, and you learn those fundamentals. But then once you get in, you got to put your own flair or use it to your abilities. Because I before being on with you, I actually saw that Roy Jones was on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Yeah, it was a great podcast.
Very good. Yeah. So, because for me, when I saw that you were with Roy Jones, I'm not a big boxing fan. I was a big sports fan, but I'm the age where I would still get a Sports Illustrated in the mail and look forward to it. And I remember getting one on the cover was Roy Jones yoked, wearing some overalls with no shirt. And he was holding a chicken, and I was like,
"Yeah, the chickens, man! I've learned about these chickens from his place down in Florida in Pensacola. It's called Rooster Ranch, man. He loves those chickens."
And so for me, that was who is it? So I learned about what the things that happened to him in the Olympics, and so this is pre-cable. I wasn't a kid that had cable, so I couldn't watch the pay-per-view fights. But very much in the early 2000s was that was the dude, because Mike was Mike. We knew Mike, but
yeah.
Roy Jones was that dude. It's who's he gonna kill this time? It wasn't a matter of is he gonna win. It's just Roy's about to do some work right now, and just an outstanding fighter. I have to ask, did he ever hit you with anything and say you must have forgot when he got you?
Never. He never said nothing like that. That'd be hilarious though. But no, actually, what's really cool, man? He is a great sparring partner, and I know I'm the sparring partner because he's getting ready to fight. But in terms of working with him, he's good because it's very competitive. I do not feel like anyone's taking it easy on me. Trust me. You can see some of the pictures. No one's taking it easy on me. Um, but he understands that um, his job in there is a school, and in the ring it's school, or rather, in sparring is school, and you can't learn if you're just trying to kill the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Plus, you're not competing; you're in there to get better. So while I get in there and get thoroughly waxed, a lot of guys don't understand the rules of sparring. Like for example, someone asked, was like, okay, so how does sparring work? Do you go like super hard and you try to kill the guy? Or is it easy? And it's like you go as hard as you can, but if you get a shot in and it hurts them, you pull back.
Mm-hmm.
You don't try and chop someone's head off.
Mm-hmm.
You're in there. If you get somebody up against the ropes, yeah, you're working stuff to keep them there, but you're doing it aggressively is probably the wrong word. You're working on the technique. The
Mm-hmm.
fight is where it's
Yeah.
like you kill and kill.
Yeah.
But people don't understand. There's a whole technique. There's a whole system. A lot goes into your mind where you learn how to fight, and that's what sparring does. When the fight happens, it may not look like that, but it is highly educational and technical, or really technical. The ability, slipping just enough because you want to slip as little as you can. Being tough enough to take the shot so you can pop off and hit back with them. Uh, Being able to evade and keep your energy up, realizing that you're not really tired, it just feels that way because you're putting a stress on the body. There's a lot that goes into it, and that's what sparring is for, to get you used to that environment. And then when you go out there, nothing can prepare you. This is one thing I remember when I was first starting to fight. Is you can look up all kinds of exercises and try and get cardio or whatever, but nothing prepares you for fighting
Mm-hmm.
except fighting.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. You could run all the miles you want. You could do all the push-ups and sit-ups you want. You could even hit the heavy bag as much as you want, but nothing. You cannot fight. You can't learn how to fight until you're in there fighting a
Yeah.
lot. I mean, I probably. I mean, I don't think I didn't have like a particularly long career or anything like that. But even I probably easily put in, at least 1,000 rounds when you talk about sparring and fighting combined. Probably closer to 5, but I'm just being conservative.
Yeah.
And that's how you learn anything.
I wanted to circle back because you did say that your coach knew you, so he recommended you, but I would think that part of it is getting Roy ready for the fight. So he has to say, hey, there's something here that this guy has that's going to get him ready for Tyson.
Right. And in that respect, so here's what I love talking about boxing a lot because I feel like it's one of those sports that no one really understands. They just see two guys throwing punches, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
right? But as a heavyweight, I was a small heavyweight. I'm only 6'1". The heaviest I fought was I think I weighed in for my first fight at 232, maybe. And that did not last long. But when I got into real good shape later in my pro career, I was fighting between 215 and 220, and that was like where we thought I should be for the maximum to maximize my athleticism, mobility, strength, all that. Right. So the point is, I'm a smaller heavyweight. What does that have to do with getting ready for Tyson? Well, my height and style, or my height dictated that I have a style very similar to a Mike Tyson or a Joe Frazier. And then it just so happened that the hook was a good punch, and I felt comfortable with it. Very much like Joe Frazier, I think Tyson was. He had a great hook, but he had a great everything, honestly. But uh, some of the punches that I remember are the hooks and everything. So I was trained to come forward and make head movement and shift very similar to Mike Tyson. So I had already been trained most of my career to fight this way. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and it was one of the guys that I put a lot of time into studying,
Mm-hmm.
and we even studied in the gym along with him. David Tua. Any guys who know the game, David Tua is probably the best heavyweight to not win a title. Never was knocked out. Still short, stocky guy though, like 5'11", 230.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always been trained and studied shorter fighters and worked to emulate them. And so my movement, in terms of all the guys that you could get to emulate a Tyson, yeah, and then not yeah, it really is lucky because even the bigger guy, even if you have the choice of everyone, I'm probably still. I mean, we did have the choice of everyone. I'm probably still um, one of the best people that you could get because a lot of the heavyweights now. I mean, these guys, the average height is like 6'4", man. These
They're
guys like
giants.
240. Yeah, like that. That's just not what he's going to be fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's going to be more like someone like me. So
Yeah.
that's how that worked out.
And then, so, were you able to have conversations with him and talk about boxing, or was it kind of like you
Oh
go in
yeah.
and you spar, and then it's okay, he's got to go to this next thing?
No. He's actually a really cool guy. I'm always curious about things that most people aren't curious about. Well, not always. I think sometimes it happens to be that way, but not always. And then, like, the first thing I asked him about, I was like, "Dude, is it true that you're a Russian citizen?"
Mm-hmm.
As well, I was like, because I read it on the Wikipedia. I was like, "This is crazy. This black dude from
Mm-hmm.
Pensacola, Florida." On top of the geopolitical relationship between the United States and Russia, I was just really curious how that worked, and he explained it, and then watching, and that was before I saw him mentioned on the Rogan
Oh, okay.
podcast when he talked about how he goes there, and he's like really like to know, and you have to remember something about um, former communist countries. They excel in competitive endeavors because that's how they have to prove their mettle that communism is superior. So, so some of the best boxers in the world have come from Russia, or the old Eastern Bloc, the Kiev and Ukraine. That's where we get Gennady Golovkin and the Klitschko brothers
Mm-hmm.
and Povetkin, who won the gold medal in heavyweight, another smaller heavyweight as well, uh, are Cuba.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are, but all and also a lot of people don't know this. It's where some of the best chess players in the world come from. Jose Capablanca was the world champion from Cuba. What the hell is Kasparov, Russia? In fact, if I remember correctly, and like I'm a big chess player as well, if I remember correctly, Bobby Fischer broke a streak. First of all, he's the only American chess champion ever, but before and after, they all came from the USSR.
Mm-hmm.
When the USSR was a thing, and then afterwards, then it split a little bit between India. That's where Viswanathan Anand was from. The new kid Carlson is from, I think, Norway, and Kasparov was Russian.
Mm-hmm.
Karpov Russian, right? So there's a spirit of competitiveness
Mm-hmm.
in these places. And so what Roy was saying is just being the competitor. You're very very liked, and I've heard that a lot because one of the places I was really interested in going at one point in my life was Russia. But I was like, oh man, I'm black, and I keep reading all these things about this racism. And then I talk to these fighters, and they're like, "Dude, they love us over
Mm-hmm.
there. You if and I was like, well, is it? And what it probably is that like being a fighter, it's like if you go anywhere else from the United States, a lot of black people don't know this, and they learn, and they're like, wow, it's like they don't see you as like before you open your mouth, they see you as another black person.
Mm-hmm.
The minute they hear you speak English with an American accent, very different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
This is like I was in Poland. Poland, probably one of the whitest countries on this planet.
Yeah.
To a point where when a black dude saw me in the mall, he was like, "Yo, I thought I knew all the black people in this country. He came up to me and talked to me." I was like, "Holy, well, I'm just over here for the week." But the moment my buddy Cam, who boxes, said that, it was like, say they because they got, I guess they have a big issue with like Africans over there. But the minute they hear you speak, they go, "Oh, it's an American, not." And it's a very different
Uh-huh.
spirit. And I guess that's what Roy and other boxers have discovered in Russia. I've heard nothing but greatness about how we're treated over there as fighters, American fighters.
Do you think that being those, in those communist blocks, those fighting sports and the chess. I could see the relation because I'm a football guy, so they always talk about football being strategic, like chess, the good ones, but like fighting, just kind of I think of, you have to pull yourself up through some pretty rough places to make it in boxing. And I think that in Cuba they have that. It's like there's nothing here, so you can't take anything away from me anymore. So I'm willing to go farther than you because I don't have anything to lose. And maybe this same thing in those former communists.
It's not only that. It's not only that. That's a big part of it because I 100% believe that if you don't have that, I'm not saying it can't be built.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm saying is, if you aren't willing to build it, and that is a back-breaking labor of pain, then the sport is going to discard you. There's just nothing.
Because there's no boxing champs come from Beverly Hills. I mean,
exactly. It is no coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
Boxing it's not just the poor man's sport, but who the hell runs to the fight?
Mm-hmm.
And there's no glamour. You talk about football. The football has this beautiful structure where you play in high school
Mm-hmm.
and everyone loves you because you play football, and then you get recruited to a college,
Mm-hmm.
and now your education and for effectively
Mm-hmm.
your salary is taken care of. And then you move to the pros, and even if you don't, there's still a network you're taking care of.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing like that in boxing.
No.
It's a miserable. It's why a lot of guys from the street end up in it. But as far as why the Eastern blocks and the old communist countries produce these great competitors in this regard, part of it is there is nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know in Cuba, for example, I think I watched a documentary on this, or maybe it was the hell is the guy's name? Ortiz, the guy,
the baseball player.
Not the baseball player. It's just a common name. The heavyweight boxer. His nickname is King Kong.
Okay,
he's a lefty. But Ortiz, I remember his name. His first name. He was talking about how in Cuba he defected from Cuba. A lot of them do defect from Cuba. Every male boxes. That's the sport they chose. They all box. And so the top ones who end up being the best boxers in the world, period. Not because they're picking from such a large talent pool. I believe the same thing happens in the Dominican Republic or Venezuela for baseball, where it's such a big sport that the people who make it out are world class because they're same thing in Jamaica with the runners. Track and field is the way football is here in Jamaica. So of course, if you're the best runner in Jamaica, you're going to be one of the best ones in the world. There are these hot spots to do that, and when you have a centrally controlled government as opposed to one that responds to the needs and desires, you tell people what they're going to compete in. It just so happens to be chess and boxing, right? But it could just easily be track and field, where it naturally became that way in Jamaica. Or what's another good example? Baseball, right, in the Dominican Republic. It just either there's a national spirit behind it. Basketball, for example, the dream teams from the 90s, there's no one in the world that's going to compete with them. It's just not going to happen. They're the best athletes from a place that loves basketball.
Right. Right. Yeah. Because I think about that, like, in America, we're not a soccer culture, but you go to South America and Argentina, they produce great soccer players. Like I think like if LeBron, for instance, had that kind of culture, like he is that good an athlete. But going back to the Dominican Republic and baseball, I think one thing that is interesting is that those kids, they grew up playing like with sticks and like bottle caps. And, you would think that's a handicap, but I can't imagine what that does for your hand-eye coordination doing that thousands.
A great book, and I wish I could remember the name of it because I found it. I actually found it on a cruise. There was a library, and I took a book out from the library on the cruise. That's how much of a weirdo I am.
Nerd.
But I was reading the book, and it talked about these hotspots and some of the modifications that they do.
Mhm.
For example, in Brazil, one of the things they do is they have like I think it's like half the size of a normal soccer area with a heavier ball. So the kids get what they described it as more touches.
Mhm.
They get more reps in the
Right.
same amount of time of a game. So Brazil produces these great soccer
Mhm.
players, and they mentioned that same thing with the Dominican Republic
Mhm.
and the kids swinging the sticks at those caps.
Mhm.
Because by the time you get to the point where someone's throwing a ball, it's going to be slower,
Mhm.
bigger, and you're going to have a wider target. Well, of
Right.
course, you will.
Yeah.
It's not even a question.
Yeah. That thing is gonna look like the moon to you because they're used to hitting these little bottle caps. So
It, you know what that also reminded me of
Mhm.
too? Canada and hockey.
Mhm.
Like there are places whenever they're for whatever reason, whether it is externally imposed by a centralizing government, i.e., a communist regime, or it is a national pastime, and
Mhm.
so it is the activity that everyone does. With in the case of track and field in Jamaica, hockey in Canada,
Mhm.
or baseball in the Dominican Republic, you produce these outstanding athletes.
Yeah.
You produce the best in the world.
Did you play any sports growing up? Like you're in Pennsylvania, right? That's big
I
football
did,
territory.
So here's man my athlete journey. I think about some things I think about. So my mom had this issue, this hang up, and I wasn't raised with my father. He probably would have had a different say if he was around to say something about it. But my mom thought she didn't want me to play sports because she thought I would be just viewed as another black kid who played sports.
Mm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I didn't get a chance to play sports until I showed an interest in them myself. A lot of kids, and then I didn't naturally have an interest because for lots of reasons, I was much more interested in like books and video games. And then something
Mhm.
clicked one day, and I was just like, dude, I want to have a capable body. Like I remember, like the
Mhm.
first thing I signed up for when I had that thought process is my eighth grade years when that kicked in, and I
Mm.
wrestled and ran track, and then I
Mm.
got to high school, and I ran track, played football, and I swam.
All three of
Like
those in high school?
yeah.
Oh wow.
Um,
This
and now part of it is I didn't want to be at home. Like I mean, I'm from fucking projects,
I
and I
got you. No,
I
I
mean, I'm
understand.
all
Yeah.
yeah. So part of it was that, but also, man, I turned out a bit of a natural athlete. Like, and I know this because they used to do these tests in the men's gym. Like, we would run the 40,
Mhm.
and they would rank the times, and we would do the bench press, a number of push-ups. And I'm a ninth grader. I remember my and this was my slowest time before I started training. I ran the 40 in 4.6. I was like
Mhm.
6'1" at that point.
Yeah.
Well, 6 feet,
Yeah.
6 feet tall, like 230. Doing push, I could do like 50 push-ups. Throw up like 225 on
And
the bench. I was like, okay,
this is just kind of walking up because I mean eighth grade
yeah,
you're not really weight training or anything. You're still just who you are. Like you probably just came from playing Sonic the Hedgehog to you know.
exactly, yeah. And what I lacked. Which is why I didn't like come on to become like some crazy star. I had the physicality, but I needed, I just didn't have the brain for picking up sports that quickly.
Mhm.
And I think for a lot of things, I don't think I'm any faster a learner than the average person, but I am excellent at learning. Like once I figured out what to do in boxing, I was like, okay, I get it now. Now I have a tree to put this knowledge on. Same thing with math. Same
Mhm.
thing with chess. Took a while. Once I figured out kind of the fundamentals and the ideas, then and got permission to kind of freelance, I had a really good time and a lot of fun. But football, I'm just not big enough. Like the biggest I could get, I'm not big, not big enough in the right way to play at the level that I've wanted to even try to play on.
Yeah.
I'm 6'1", and the biggest I got, I put on. I was lifting. For my freshman year, I played at a D3 school, and I was going to see how that went. I got up to 255, And I still was. I mean, I wasn't slow. I just wasn't gonna. I didn't have the coordination to play linebacker, which is where I needed to be,
Mm-hmm.
moving at 4.5 speed at that height and weight. I didn't have the requisite football awareness. So I was just like, okay, that's cool. But
Yeah.
I didn't want to give up on playing sports. So when I eventually went back to something athletic, I ended up in the boxing ring,
Mm.
and it just
How is wrestling? Because I think the work in wrestling is similar to what it is in boxing. Because I like me growing
Ooh.
up being a football player, like
Yeah.
the hardest. Like you are in trouble. We are mad at you. Workout was a regular everyday workout in wrestling.
Yeah, pretty much. I only wrestled 1 year when I was in the eighth grade.
Oh,
Uh, I remember it being physically exhausting, man. That's all. That's funny. Like that's what you remember most. Like I think about the football training, and I think about like it wasn't until I really got back in there and I was doing like real workouts to keep up and make sure I was sharp for Roy. Because before then I hadn't been in the ring like and took some real shots in almost 4 years.
Mhm.
Um, and all I can remember was like, man, I'm gonna be tired. And then I got in and I did 6 rounds, and I was like, wait a second, this is not as exhausting as I thought it would be. And it was only because I had kept in shape, and it's
Mhm.
still miserable.
Yeah.
Like let's not like exaggerate or misrepresent how difficult uh, a combat sport is, and how taxing it is on your body.
Yeah, because I think I heard Adam Carolla talking about it because he's big into boxing and he taught boxing, and he's like, I'm not in very good shape, but I kind of know how to move around in the ring. Whereas you might get this really super fit guy who's expending all this energy. I just know how to move around in the ring and
Oh,
kind of know.
it's amazing. It's amazing. Like I remember coming up as an amateur, and you do all the running, and you get yourself in good shape, and you think that's what matters, and it does.
Mhm.
But what really matters is efficient use of energy. Remember, fighting is a very unnatural thing these days. Anyhow, so people just aren't. They don't know how to move their body in free space. They don't know how to take a punch and recover and breathe.
Mhm.
They don't have control of their nervous system. So they get what we call a blow their load, right? In the
Mhm.
first 15, seconds that they're all nervous and very, but to get better and to survive in the sport, you have to manage all of those things and get better. So what a funny thing ends up happening. I remember exactly when it happened. It was right around I think the first time I was sure of it was right around when I won the national, or not national, when I won the state title and went on to the national competition. um, it's no longer about um, being you stop thinking of it in terms of being in shape.
Mhm.
You start thinking of it in terms of being efficient. Like a fighter who doesn't know what they're doing, they're gonna throw a punch and they're gonna be slightly off balance. And they're gonna have to get back on balance. And every punch they throw, they're gonna have to do that.
Mhm.
The first round, they're gonna feel tired. The second round, that's gonna gas them out.
Mhm.
They're not gonna have it, right? Every time you miss a punch, you have to throw that punch, right? You have to throw it so that when you miss it, you expend as little energy as possible because it's a lot easier to direct that force into an object. Like when you hit someone clean, it's good.
Mhm.
When they're moving and grooving, not only is that affecting you physically, mentally you're like, man, I'm not hitting this
Mhm.
guy. But if you look at the top fights, if you look at CompuBox, I mean, between two competitive fighters, a hit rate of under 35% on either one of them. So 1 and 3 are going to miss, and you got to be able to mentally deal with that and not get frustrated and not get exhausted. That most of your shots are going to miss, and you still have to go out there and throw, and still be efficient and still keep it going. You have to be able to get hit. If you can't get hit, that takes a lot of energy.
Mhm.
And I don't mean taking a shot to the head. Them body shots are what's going to wear you down. You got to be able to stand there and take the body and continue to move and breathe and work through pain. All of this comes together. And if you're not skilled at this, then it's going to exhaust you. And we haven't even talked about efficient footwork.
Mhm.
I know how to move from point A to point B with almost no energy expenditure. Furthermore, I know how to retreat from point B to back to point A after my attack is successful or unsuccessful, and I know how to immediately control my breathing and start recovering. And I don't think a lot of fighters think about this. I just think it's something you just learn along the way if
Mm-hmm.
you're going to get good. An amateur or a lesser fighter doesn't understand how to take breaks, how to take breathers, and still be defensive and active, right? Because that's the whole
Yeah.
idea, right? You want to exhaust your opponent while you are recovering, and that sounds simple, very difficult because to exhaust your opponent, you have to expend energy.
Yeah.
But
Well, I think there's a lot of things going on in a combat fight, and let me ask, like pre-fight, I think this kind of applies in a lot of things, but just pre-fight, what was your kind of routine? Were you like hey, I'm gonna listen to some music and chill kind of guy, or were you like I'm gonna get fired up, and like what were you kind of like before going into a
um,
fight?
okay, so me, I'm really fortunate in that I have a natural leaning towards, for lack of a better term, sociopathy.
Hmm.
Maybe or just very low neuroticism, very low anxiety. And so for me, like I was never fighting nerves. And so I had to, and that's good. So I had to figure out how to keep my mind focused, in fact, and not wander off because I was fine, talking
Hmm.
up until the moment of the fight. It just didn't affect me. Um, but what I found is that is not that makes other people uncomfortable, and that's good when it makes your opponent uncomfortable. Not so good when it makes your coach uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
so
because they're like,
I,
are you ready? That right? Like I'm sure that's probably what you
yeah,
heard,
like
right? Are you even
right,
ready?
like I've heard that more than I would like to think, but of course I'm ready. The difference is, I'll tell you a perfect kind of story to kind of quantify this. When I was training in Los Angeles, and I got to Los Angeles on the merit of my abilities, and that they were running this program out there where they were trying to turn former Division One athletes into boxing superstars.
Hmm.
I am not a Division One athlete, former,
Hmm.
but I beat their guy, and their top guy was this kid named Dominic Brazil, who's actually gone on to fight for the title twice. Great guy. But I beat him and then he beat me. But later on, it was a good time out there. But they had a lot of money and resources to achieve their goal. One of the things they did, they brought in a sports psychologist to kind of evaluate us and see where we all were. And one of the things he discovered is that I don't get nervous before fights. In fact, I actually get calmer
Hmm.
before the situation, especially if I've trained, because there's nothing to me. It's not a big moment, and one of the I got a chance to talk to Randy Couture, and he said something that resonated with me and stuck with me. He said, if the worst thing that happens in your life is you lose a fight, then you've got a pretty good time on this planet. And I've always been really good at gratitude and understanding those kind of things. And I think that's how I've always looked at it. That it's not a big deal. It's a fight,
Hmm.
and I need to go out there and be as competitive as I can and put myself in the moment uh, without the correct mindset. But at the end of the day, this is going to end. Most people aren't even going to know about it, and I can walk away from it. And I think because I always had that perspective, uh, the event itself never bothered me. I never got nervous.
I wanted to ask you because you're an intelligent guy, but you're also a guy who can knock a dude out. So, did you ever like? This might be petty on my end, but did you ever like you ever look at a guy and be like, he's smarter than me, be like, oh, I can knock that dude out. But if a dude can knock
No,
you out, like, oh, I'm
no,
smarter than that guy.
I never think that way because I know how hard I've had to work
Hmm.
to to well, we'll say create the appearance of intelligence. That doesn't mean that I am or I'm not intelligent, but why do you think I'm intelligent? Well, you see the writing,
Hmm.
you're aware of the academic accomplishments,
Hmm.
the um, what else? The way I speak and carry myself. All that's not, and on top of that, I grew up around a lot of people who weren't that way. So I know pretty how I'm aware of how fortunate I am to have picked up the right influences and had the right frame of mind to bring that all together. Likewise with sports, I know how hard it is to
Hmm.
an effective athlete. Because not only because I've done it, but I'm aware of my limitations on that, and I have great respect for that. I'm also highly aware of the concept of opportunity cost. I know that at the end of the day, I could probably have gone on and get a PhD or have like made it to a world title fight or something if I wasn't doing one or the other.
Hmm.
I think I have a little bit of good timing and I do work hard, but I know that in many ways I'm fortunate. So I never look at a person who lacks relative to where I am,
Hmm.
and I never look at that and go, okay, well you don't have this, you don't have that, whatever,
Hmm.
whatever, whatever. Okay, I won't say it never crosses my mind, but it doesn't cross my mind in a way to generate superiority. It's
Hmm.
more of
Yeah.
just an interesting observation.
Yeah. Because I think what's really interesting is because I didn't grow up in the fighting sports. I kind of grew up in football, which is you're looking for weaknesses in your opponents and trying to find out where okay, this is where we're strong at, so this is where we're going to attack. And if we get attacked back. So, but one of the things I really wanted to talk about, aside from the boxing, was like you have this. Like I have that. I'm not sure how much you got, but you also talk about forgiveness, which to me is not something that any coaches in any athletic endeavor ever talk about, because it's usually the foot on the throat. You don't take anything. You go on the attack. You take back. I saw. I don't know if I listened to a podcast. I think it was the Danny Miranda podcast, and you talked about forgiveness. I was like, wow, this is really interesting because I'm a Christian, so like that's where I hear this message. Um, in the fight game in sports, you don't really hear that, but I thought it was very fascinating that this was something that you had talked about and brought up. So I was wondering where that kind of came from for you. Switching tracks here a little bit.
Oh yeah, yeah, no problem. So I realized something a while ago. Um, there are there are different levels to life, and they don't work together. What works on one may not does not necessarily work on the other. Not always, uh, but often enough to where one must consider uh, different approach for different things. And what is this relevant to in for forgiveness? The example I use, because I'm not one of those guys that says we need to abolish justice and just like forgive all the people that commit crimes
Hmm.
and hug people who hug the murderers. Like no,
Hmm.
no, we need to punish them
Hmm.
and get rid of them
Hmm.
for reasons, and I'll talk about that. But here's the example I use. If if you find out that somebody was like, oh, we'll use something really graphic to make the point. You find out that, like somebody's like raping your sister. Okay, well, so you don't go to jail. You go lay a beat down on them. You don't kill them,
Hmm.
and then you turn them over. You get all the evidence, and you get that mother. You get them in jail for
Hmm.
a long time, and then whatever prison justice does to them, does to them. Okay, so we've taken care of the justice part. All right, we've got rid of the offender. We made sure he cannot hurt the person he was hurting
Hmm.
anymore, and we made sure he can't hurt anyone in the future. We've done our part here in the physical world.
Right.
Now, what do we do about your sister? Okay,
Hmm.
locking that guy up does not undo that stuff. Doesn't wipe those
Hmm.
memories away. Doesn't restore trust in humans. Doesn't rebalance the emotions. None of that. We needed a method for that.
Hmm.
We need a way to go about that. And a person at that point, they've got to work on so much stuff, and a lot of it comes down to. I think all of the therapy and everything probably comes down to at least one of these two meta messages. One, forgiving yourself for because this is how a lot of us look at it. We go that we allow that to happen to
Mhm.
us, and that's not correct. All right. But once you do that, once you make that leap, because it's very hard to do both. You'll see. Once you make that leap and go, okay, this person did it to me, uh, and I couldn't see it coming. Well, what are you going to do with all these feelings and hatred that you're going to have? They're not. They just don't go away. There's
Mhm.
certain things that time does not erase. It doesn't happen. You can stop being around the triggers, but you're still going to be triggered by something. You're still going to have the
Mhm.
residuals. You have to go deal with that head on. You have to what I like about forgiveness, I'm looking at the book right now on my counter. It's very important to me. A Course in Miracles, a book where that's where I got a lot of my ideas and really started me on the path to that in my
Mhm.
own life of forgiveness for some things. You effectively have to undo what happened, and you can't do that in the physical world.
Mhm.
You have to do that with your emotions. You have to do that with your perspective. And until we can get to that point, um, we're going to carry a lot of grudges around, not just for things that happen to us to things, and we can't undo them, right? I
Right.
think that's one of the reasons we get so angry. And that's really what justice is, an attempt to kind of do, like balance the scale in the physical world. And I
Mhm.
think it does a good job, but it does not consider, what are we going to do about, I mean, and not just the victim. Think about all the people who may have known that person um, and had a perspective and never just shatter family, friends,
Mhm.
whatever. Uh, we have to come up with a way to deal with that. And I think that's what forgiveness is to me. We go a little deeper. I think that our external, we've done a very good job developing the external world to the point, I mean, it's magic. We're sitting here right now as if we're in the same room.
Right.
That's crazy.
Right.
Just like we were saying before the call,
Yeah.
uh, that did not exist 20 years ago. That
Mm-mm.
was not a thing. And here it is now commonplace. We have not made the same development internally. We still have an old model for a lot of new situations, and not even new situations, but for life.
Right. Yeah. Because I don't think there's anything new. People have been hurting each other since the beginning of time, going back to Cain and Abel. Um, like I think my problem with the whole forgiveness piece is that people, when they're usually talking about it, they're usually talking about mundane things. Like, I think you put it really, graphic. Like, this is something that really is really terrible that happened. Now, how are you going
Yeah,
to forgive this? Like, if you stepped on my shoes, like that, I
right. That's
forgive you.
nothing.
Like, that's easy. Like, that's no, if somebody I don't know calls me a name, I no big deal. But if somebody who I love has now said something to me, now this is something very deep, and this is something that I've kind of, I'm married, so like there's going to be a lot of things that go on in a marriage that it's going to require you to forgive.
Yeah,
And I think it's Nelson Mandela that says it's like, okay, forgiveness isn't for them, it's for you. And I've heard that for a long time.
exactly.
But even
I
but even for me, I was like, yeah, I get it. Like, yeah, I get it. And so I heard a pastor, his name was Miles Monroe, said that if you don't forgive, then you lock up heaven. And I was like, wait a minute, locking up heaven, like blessings on me. It's like, well, now that's different. I never
yeah,
thought about it that way. I don't want to lock up heaven.
yeah. However you get there, I think there's many paths to a universal truth, or at least one that um, benefits a majority of people, regardless of their denomination or faith. So, however you get there is how you get there. But the main idea, you summed it up, is that, and then I think this is what it all comes back to eventually.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't forgive, there's no neutrality either, right? Either a person is in either you have forgiven said thing, and once you understand what you're forgiving, you're able to your perspective quite literally shifts on humanity
Mm-hmm.
and things around you, or you haven't. But in terms of the specific individual, a level that a lot of us look at and have to work through initially before we get to that point, uh, if you hold a grudge on that person, if you aren't able to forgive, the old saying, it's like swallowing poison and expecting the other person to die. They can't feel your internal issue,
Hmm.
right? That's what it all comes down to. Is are you, and you can't walk somebody out of it. You can't.
Hmm.
I am convinced it is very much a deliberate study because it's so unnatural
Hmm.
to what to how a human's designed.
Right.
That's why whenever I talk about it, I always end up shifting onto a conversation about uh, evolution because it's so against how we naturally work that we have to start that it requires a different way to look at the world and not necessarily a weak one. Remember, I'm not saying let the
Hmm.
criminals free.
Right.
I'm I'm saying that they've done a thing. We have balanced it. We've taken care of it in the external world as best we can. What are you gonna do about you though?
Right.
Now, and there's no one that can touch that, see that.
Right.
You know. So what are we gonna do about you?
Yeah. And that's the hard work that comes with it, because there is the letting go. There is the, like like in your mind you're taking vengeance over and over again. Maybe that's what's going on, but they still have that power over you, right? It's like the event happened, the bad thing still happened, but now that you're still carrying that with you, and you take it forward, wherever you go, until you're actually able to forgive. And that was like, when I heard that, I was like, wow, I'd really like to have this conversation with you, like the boxing and all that stuff.
Yeah,
It's stuff that I really enjoy, because I'm a sports guy. Like I'm for all that stuff, but then the forgiveness stuff is like, this, I think, is and
it.
because I come from a sports background, that's not what we talk about. Like, it's like, we're gonna
Yeah,
attack, and then, like you said, it's not natural. This isn't something that, like, hey man, you got a former pro boxer talking about forgiveness. Get out of here with that soft stuff. Like, no, like,
like
this
yeah,
is the stuff
and,
for a good life.
I am the very people don't understand. This is why I have to talk about it in levels. People don't understand that forgiveness is not a strategy for existence and interaction with others, at least on the first order. Like I'm not interested in letting a child molester in my home
Hmm.
because I forgive him.
Hmm.
I can forgive him, but I still gotta look and go, I exist in the physical world, and
Hmm.
we have to make sure we protect our interests here. What I'm not willing to do, and this is the difference between me, I'm not willing to vilify them up here.
Hmm.
And I'm going to take the precaution because I understand that they have a problem that will negatively affect the lives of people should we leave it unchecked or unmitigated. That is just being practical about my existence and reality. As far as my internal space, I'm not going to let that degrade my internal space.
Hmm.
It's a weird form of detachment. Now that I
Hmm.
talk about it, because I can look at somebody. I've done this. I can look at somebody who has done something that violates my trust. And I can go, okay, you have proven that we cannot interact with one another. And you've demonstrated that by your actions and my standards for living, they're incompatible. However, I don't hold an ill will towards you.
Hmm.
I don't let you affect my emotions negatively. Um, I have no attachment to you as a person either way. Because remember, just almost probably more powerful than love bonding you to a person is hatred.
Hmm.
And I don't want to be bound up to another person. You
Hmm.
know, I want to have the ability to form a new connection with a person if I have to. That's another thing that forgiveness allows you to do, or rather, lack of it prevents you from doing. You've met tons of people, I'm sure, or heard stories where they can't move on to a new relationship because they're still bound and locked up to the negative energy from the old one.
Hmm.
And that just doesn't go away. I don't even think modern therapy, for all of its benefits, has a great solution because at the end of the day, it's still an external suggestion with void of the work,
Right.
and it's real work. It
It.
is not. I wish. I look. it'd be no. If I could give people a pill and they will forgive, boom, right? And then you can't just make someone forget. There's a great movie, one of my favorites, called Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless
Mm-hmm.
Mind, uh, where the whole premise is that you can make people forget bad memories, but then at the end of the day, they repeat the same action because they
Mm-hmm.
didn't get a chance to learn from it. It's almost like the negative things we experience have a dual lesson on two planes. Physical, you have to learn from it so you don't do it again,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to make sure that happens while releasing yourself emotionally from it, so you don't let it drag you as you're trying to move forward and connect and continue to have a positive impact on the world, or
Yeah.
at the very least not have a negative one.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that because I was speaking to a woman sent to Terry, and she worked with women who were coming out of sex trafficking, and so she would hear their stories, and she's trying to help them to move forward, but she was like, I had this animosity towards their abuser because I heard the stories of what their abusers had done to them, and so she was like, I would carry that, and she said that she had to come to a place where she could forgive the abuser so she could help the person who she was trying to help move forward as well. And I was like, that is some next, like I've never heard anything like that before, but that's a whole nother level of the game. And I guess maybe as you get older, you kind of learn these things and you take your lumps, but it's like, I've never heard anybody say anything like that before.
Yeah, it's crazy because what you end up running into, you run into very real problems that the way you have been taught, you realize it will not move you forward.
Mm-hmm.
Like that woman, there is no one who would say, even me,
Mm-hmm.
there's no one who would say her reaction is incorrect
Mm-hmm.
to
Right. Right.
right. But the next issue then is, well, okay, so how do you deal with it? How do you reconcile? How do you do good and hold on to the
Mm-hmm.
bad? You can't,
Yeah.
and that's what many of us, and that's what she's learned,
Yeah.
right? And you have to remember too, what that reminded me of is a lot of people hear the word forgiveness, and for whatever, well, I know why, because of incorrect definitions,
Mm-hmm.
they associate that with weakness or
Yes.
permissiveness or mercy,
Yes.
and I think that's why, um, I think my message and why people are willing to sit and have a conversation with me, much like you just having now,
Mm-hmm.
because when I say it, they're like, okay, wait a second, this seems incompatible, or
Mm-hmm.
at the very least out of left field. And then I think when you hear it, it goes, okay, I am talking about something that is an internal process only and
Right.
has nothing to do
With
with
justice.
with how we treat the person in the real world, on either account.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't tell someone because they forgive me, like, okay, well, great, we're gonna forget about you now. Like, no, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
We have real challenges moving forward, and a lot of them are internal, and that's the one that I'm on. If I'm gonna leave a legacy kind of behind,
Uh-huh.
someone asked me this yesterday, and this was, I think my answer was similar because I always think about this, to get people to understand that what got us this far in humanity will not take us to the next level. Otherwise, we're just going to keep repeating the same cycles. You're seeing it right now
Mm-hmm.
in the election in our country, and people draw the parallels to United States and ancient Rome and the fall of other empires, right? And why? I mean, because we can't get past a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because we tend to the next level requires something very different and very new. And I think it starts with internal development.
Well, I think that, regardless of the advances that we have in technology, that human nature doesn't change. And so
Right.
those are things that need to be addressed, regardless of, this great technology that we have where me, a guy in Arizona, reaches out to a guy in Pennsylvania and is able to have this, like you're just sitting in here in the room with me. It doesn't change the fact that I still get upset, that I still love, that I still hate, and you can still do the same thing. Like that's those things still need to be addressed.
Yeah.
Let me go. I wanted to ask, because you do have some, you have written about drinking and pornography. Um, where did the revelations about your thoughts on which one came first? Was it the drinking that came first for you? It's like, hey, this is something that I need to give up, or pornography was like, hey, this is something that's not. Which one came first?
Um, ooh, that's a good question. I think if I'm remembering correctly, and thinking about the way I think about the world and life, I think I became aware. Yeah, it was probably porn. Yeah,
Oh, really?
because yeah.
Hmm.
Now, I mean, awareness. Now, once you become aware of it, then it goes, okay, let's work. Like, dude, I became aware of my drinking issues almost 3 years before I was like, okay, let's put the bottle down.
Oh,
You
okay.
know, so and I think it's like that. When I talk to many people in recovery, I think it's like that for us all. And a lot of it is because at least with we will call them legal substances. I won't call them innocuous. I won't call them harmless. I'll say legal. With the issue with legal addictions like porn, like alcohol, to a lesser extent, like gambling, is that society, in its infinite kind of ability to find the most comfortable, society by definition tries to make everyone fit in,
Hmm.
right? And a lot of times, if not every time, that means lowering the standard as opposed to raising it.
Hmm.
Because when you raise it, that requires energy to meet it. When you lower it, the people at the top are just looking at going, okay, whatever, and the people at the bottom feel better. All right. So now with that premise set, there's a reason why 1 in 8 people, they estimate, this is 1 in 8 people who drink, realistically fit the definition of an alcoholic. When they look at campus surveys, we built an entire culture around uh, drinking to excess. Not just drinking, but drinking to excess.
Hmm.
We built a whole culture and celebration around that. It's to the point where they had to ban, and I don't know if you noticed, now you'll think about every commercial you'll see, they're not allowed to show drinking alcohol on commercials. You're allowed to have alcohol commercials, but you can't have anyone consuming something. And looking, see, when I first learned, I was like, no way. And I looked and like, oh wow, no one ever drinks because you can't do it. Those are the steps we've had to take,
Hmm.
because what's the old saying? God protects babies and fools, right?
Hmm.
They've had to step in and kind of interrupt the marketing because it's so profitable and so accepted culturally.
Yeah.
So, and then the same with porn, though there's a bit more of a stigma, but not really because the method of consumption is different.
Yeah.
You never get together with your boys and go,
No.
hey, it's important. No,
Yeah.
it's lonely, it's alone, and you get your internet, it's cool,
Yeah.
and then on top of that, now people was watching a podcast or watching a YouTube show last night, and now people can like interact with and talk to their favorite porn. So it's like it becomes this really interesting world that gets built up.
Hmm.
So you don't realize you have a problem initially. Or if you do, if you suspect it, then when you talk to other people, this was the mistake I made. When you talk to other people, they're going to tell you that there's nothing wrong. You're the same as everyone else.
Hmm.
Everyone else is doing it. So
Right.
it takes a lot of internal work because you're not going to get the answer out there because out
Right.
there they're all messed up too.
Yeah.
Uh, so that was my challenge, my issue there. And then once I finally said, okay, here's what I want out of life, and it ain't gonna be the same as what everyone else wants. So I'm not gonna consult them. I'm gonna do an internal audit and see what the answer
Hmm.
is. When I did that, I was like, wow, okay, it's time to step away. And then now that's why I have a life that most people don't have
Right.
because I was able to look at a thing and draw my guidance, my inspiration, so to speak, from what I thought was important, not what everyone else thought was normal.
Did that affect the way that you viewed the world? Because I you know I drank until I had my first kid, and I was like, okay, I'm I'm not going to drink anymore. But I had a father who didn't drink, so to me it wasn't like it wasn't that big. It wasn't like I grew up in a family that like we drank a lot and it was like a big deal. It's just like, okay, I'm just not gonna drink. Um, and with porn, like I've heard people say that like when you go on a date with a girl, like she can tell if you watch porn. And I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. But I mean, did you feel like putting those things down? Because I could definitely see like how porn kind of rewires your brain, right? Like you see women in a certain way and you kind of get used to seeing it that way, and drinking, I think, clouds your judgment, because you do get intoxicated. Did you feel like you were clearly seeing things once you kind of gave those things up?
Oh, absolutely. And here's the thing, and alcohol, especially because alcohol, like really, like legitimately alters your perception.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of studies on this that shows, no one wants to talk about this because that's a very different conversation. But I did a lot of research into how alcohol affects our perception of attention from the opposite sex and how it is perceived, how we're perceived to them.
Mm-hmm.
And turns out, alcohol. Turns out, big surprise, right? Alcohol makes women less aware of how they're behaving, and men completely misread it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I ran the numbers. I had to do the crude math on my own because no one in their right mind is going to do this math on themselves. But I dug up a bunch of stats on the number of assaults reported on campus and how many had alcohol
Mm-hmm.
involved and all that. Turns out if you remove alcohol from college campuses, you realistically get rid of about 95% of the sexual assaults, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a conservative number,
Yeah.
right? But no one wants to have that conversation,
Right. Yeah.
But my point though about that is it affected uh, how I saw everything. It affected how I experienced everything. What you don't realize, and they talk about this too, man. I did a lot of research for this book. A lot of it I didn't include because I didn't want it to miss the point of the book. But turns out, when you drink, you don't pay attention to your emotions. It's weird. It like mutes, and it doesn't amplify so much as it mutes. And
Mm-hmm.
by mute, I mean it makes you miscalibrate, misrespond to what is going on. So you cry for something that you wouldn't cry about normally. You get angry about things that wouldn't actually bother you, things like that. And when you're not drinking, now you're recalibrating, but it feels so weird because the analogy I gave. It feels weird because imagine you've been wearing sunglasses your entire life,
Mm-hmm.
and then you take the sunglasses off, and you're like, "Wow, I didn't realize grass was green. That's strange.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize the light from the sun was so intense. That's strange." And it's all these things you realize for the first time. And now you can't run away from it. You got to do it.
And then so once you saw them, did that kind of lead to anything else, or though was that kind of like, wait a minute, let me, how long ago was it? Was this like within the last like 2-3 years or something like that, where you've kind of, these things have kind of come to you?
Oh no. It's always because remember it'll be 7 years this December, right? So I had to learn uh, during so real time, not that big of an issue because I'm just busy. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, busy and living better or whatever. But what I've had to deal with are a lot of the emotions that I didn't have about past events.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I could see that. Like, there's the numbing that kind of comes with it. So it's like I don't have to deal with the sense of sadness that I had over past events, or the anger or the joys that I
Or
had.
the guilt, too.
Oh,
the guilt is a really big deal. Because you're not. It's easy to justify.
Hmm.
It's easy to justify when you're still drinking,
I didn't think about that.
right?
Yeah, because you think
Uh,
drinking is the fun time. Wow.
right. Not only that, but you kind of still give yourself this out. I was drinking, right? But when you go stop, and part of that is taking on responsibility for everything you've done, uh, you finally feel bad.
Hmm.
You feel bad, and you feel bad in spurts. It happens. It had the spurts are less intense, and there's longer time in between them. The longer I am sober, but they still come up. You still feel bad about stupid choices you made, stupid things you did, the way you treated people, etc. And maybe they forgot, maybe they haven't, but you won't forget.
Hmm. I think one of the last things that I wanted to kind of talk to you about before we wrap up is it seems like you're a guy that's had success, like real success, like pro boxing, like that's a big success. You had your going to school and getting your physics degree. You seem like a guy that's able to take things in seasons, and once a season is over, to leave it. Like, here was this time that I had. I enjoyed it. Now it's time for me to move on to the next. Do you think that's accurate? That's my impression. So I don't want to.
That's great. It's great. Well, one of my friends said it best. He said, when you're done fighting, no one is probably ever going to know you fought. Now, I don't think he anticipated the social media effect.
Right.
But when he said that, but it's right. I mean, if it doesn't come up for any reason, whatever, right? And I think, okay, so one of the the biggest reason for that is I don't make these things part of my identity.
Mm.
I'm at Latimore. I'm not a boxer. I'm not a student for physics. I'm not a writer. I'm me. And I believe what makes you, yes, is a derivative of what you've gone through and what you've experienced, but it is not the experience. Okay. So I never attach myself and my identity and what I am doing and who I am to these things. So it's very easy to move through the seasons. I just look at them as an interesting challenge to go through, a way to develop a thing I wanted to experience, and that's that. So, and on top of that, I know how to. I really went out of my way, especially in my 20s, to learn how to hold conversation or how to talk to people. And one of the things that happens if you do it correctly, you should never be leading or leaning on what you've done, what you've seen, what you've experienced. You get the other person to talk about that. And you're trying to learn, and that's just been my approach to conversation and interaction, and that has affected how I see myself.
Hmm.
So, like because I know that, like the other thing too, man, but at this point, I mean, I do in fact forget. Like I forget now the things that I've done and experienced and accomplished, and hopefully in 5 years I'll forget even more
Right.
because
Because there's something
I'm
going on right now for you to.
on.
Yeah.
There's something I'm progressing through, something I'm moving through, and it's really fun to make progress that way. And I think by not letting these things attach or define my identity, I'm never afraid to discard them for something better or newer.
Hmm.
Like when I was fighting, uh, I decided that's when I was going to go to school. Now, the part of the decision was if not all of the decision, was highly practical because I had experienced enough to was like, okay, I need to be able to like make a living,
Hmm.
and I hadn't really gotten into sales or making money or anything like that. So, uh, dead smack in the middle of my boxing career, professional, I already had 3 pro fights. I shipped off the basic training so I could get money to go to school and return to school. And so I started school during my career. I started my military service during my career. And to me, it was easy to make that decision because I wasn't attached to boxing, you know?
Hmm.
Likewise, halfway, not halfway, where at this point, about 80% of the way done with my degree, I have like my first real big year, or around, I'll say first like 3 big months, making money online. And I said, oh, this is cool. Really good at this. let's go make this the move. And a lot of people would look at their degree and go, man, you invested all this time and energy, it's time to get an ROI. I'm like, right, I'll figure it out. And so I'm able to discard that and move on to be, to writing and doing that kind of thing. It's very easy. Same way with my tutoring and teaching. When I did that, that was never an identity. It was a thing that I was doing and I enjoyed, and I could talk, I could teach and learn from it. But if I was attached to it, maybe I never leave it. I have trouble getting into it if I'm attached to other things.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I think I'm too good or not good enough. But the key is to realize that your identity is not what you do. And the sooner, and once you realize that, then the next part goes, well, what is my identity? And your identity is what you take from those experiences.
Yeah, that's powerful, man. Because I like from my experience, like I started playing football really young, so like I kind of put that on as like this is my identities, and then so once that time was over, it was, well, now what? For the longest time, and I was lucky that I was already dating my wife, and then I became a husband and then a father, so I had that. But there was always this like, well, there was this part of me that I needed to let go, and that's why I wanted to ask you that, because it's just like, man, that's where if you're grounding yourself in this thing, then when that time is over or it's time to move on to the next thing, you don't want to be stuck back where you used to be. You want to be where you are, and that's why I really like football coach, because they'll say silly things, but they'll say like, be where your feet are. Like,
right,
yeah, I'm here, so be here. And I think that you could take that in a lot of contexts too, right? Because like I could be here sitting, but I could be on my phone, not present with you. If I but yeah, like I think that's outstanding, Ed. You just came out with the best way to tweet it with Joshua Lysick.
yeah, it was a good time. Very very fun program. I really enjoyed teaching. It's if I ever have to get a real job, that is probably the only real job I'll ever get is teaching. I really, well, maybe not. I mean, I also like strategizing, so I can see myself like running marketing somewhere. But yeah, we're teaching people how to use Twitter and how to, and but more importantly, I think the concepts for working a good Twitter, they are very similar, if not completely identical. If not completely identical to the techniques for writing in general, blog, newsletters, email, copy.
Yeah, I think that whole Twitter thing and being able to make money off of it is something that's completely wild to me. Like I always thought, like, hey, you have to get a 9 to 5 and that be it. But so I'm learning, man. But I think we're coming up here on almost an hour and 15, and I don't want to take up all of your day, Ed. I know you probably got some more things to do. Before we wrap up, they can find you on your website, right? Latimore.com.
Ed Latimore everywhere. Latimore.com. Ed Latimore's my Twitter handle. Ed Latimore's my Instagram. Ed Latimore's my Facebook. I am the one and only, and I'm everywhere.
The only one. Well, hey, I just wanted to say, thank you so much for coming on. I think this has been a fruitful conversation. Hopefully people can, get something out of this. And I appreciate you taking the time to speak to me. So again, he is Ed Latimore. You can find him on his website, like you said, edlatimore.com, on Twitter at Ed Latimore. This is the Read Your Keys podcast. Please go ahead and subscribe on iTunes and follow on Spotify. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a good one.